The first thing I noticed was the smell, a faint, acrid scent of melting plastic, like a forgotten toy left too close to a heater. It was the smell of failure. The air in my small home office was already thick enough to chew on, the kind of oppressive July heat that makes you sweat just by thinking. Then came the silence. The low, steady hum of my server rack, the heartbeat of my entire life, died. One by one, the green and blue LEDs on my equipment blinked out, plunging the room into a dim, suffocating quiet. For a data analyst who works from home, that silence isn't peace. It's the sound of your world grinding to a halt. My first thought was the main breaker. I pushed my chair back, my shirt already sticking to my skin, and walked through the still, hot air of my house. But the breaker box was fine. All switches were up. It was then that I saw it, slapped right in the middle of my front door. A blood-red sticker, the size of my hand. In aggressive blocky letters, it screamed, "Consumption limit violation, parking privileges revoked." What in the world? Have you ever had one of those moments where your brain just refuses to connect the dots? I stared at the words, my mind blank. And that's when I saw her, standing on my lawn like a queen surveying her domain. Brenda, the head of our Homeowners Association. She was in her late 40s, with that particular brand of suburban royalty that comes from wielding just a little bit of power. Chin held high, a tight smile that never reached her eyes, and a tablet clutched in her hand like a scepter. Beside her stood a burly security guard, arms crossed, looking bored. "Brenda, what is this?" I asked, pointing at the sticker. She tapped her tablet. "It's all in the new community efficiency bylaws, Alex," she said, her voice dripping with condescending sweetness. "The ones we all voted on. Your household registered an anomalous energy consumption, a significant spike." I just stared at her. My servers? Of course, they ran 24/7. That was my job. This happened to me. And if you're watching Karenology, you know this is never just about a simple misunderstanding. "So you cut my power?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. "The community voted for efficiency," she repeated, the fake smile plastered on her face. "Your servers are a luxury we can't afford. The fine is $1,000. Once it's paid, and you provide proof of compliance, we'll restore your service and your parking spot." $1,000. My blood ran cold. I instinctively reached into my pocket, my fingers brushing against the cool, smooth metal of an old USB drive. It was a habit, a ghost limb. On that drive was the encrypted data from my last corporate job, the proof of corruption that got me fired, praised as a whistleblower in the news for 5 minutes, and then blacklisted from the industry. It was a constant reminder of the price of telling the truth. As if on cue, the security guard walked over to my electrical meter on the side of the house and fastened a heavy-duty padlock over the box. The loud, final click of the lock echoed in the dead still air. It was a declaration of war. I went back inside, the heat already building. The silence was deafening. Let me back up a little. This whole smart grid thing was Brenda's pet project. She sold it to the neighborhood with slick brochures promising lower bills and a greener community. I was skeptical from the start. Giving our Homeowners Association direct control over our power meters? What could possibly go wrong? I even remember a meeting where she casually mentioned how the miller's new air fryer must be a real energy hog. At the time, it felt like nosy gossip. Now, it felt like surveillance. My laptop was still running on battery. My entire career, my entire income, existed on a handful of freelance data analysis platforms. Without my servers, without power, I was dead in the water. I needed to see how much damage this would do. If you know what it's like to be backed into a corner, you know what I had to do next. If you've been there, hit that like button, because it's a lonely place to be. I pulled up my main client profile. My rating, a pristine 4.9 stars built over 2 years of flawless work, was gone. In its place was a blood-red 2.1. Dozens of new reviews had flooded my page in the last hour. Unreliable, missed a critical deadline, went completely silent. They were all fake, all posted by anonymous, freshly made accounts. My inbox was filled with cancellation notices. My income was evaporating in real time. This wasn't just a fine. This was a targeted execution. The screen glowed in the dark, sweltering room, a digital tombstone for a career I had just lost. Again. My first instinct was to fight back with data. That's what I do. I'm not a brawler. I'm a surgeon who dissects lies with logic. I fired up my laptop, running on its last fumes of battery, and started digging. The bot attack was crude but effective, a brute force reputational assault. I started tracing the IP addresses behind the fake reviews. It wasn't hard. They'd used a common VPN service, but they were sloppy. The digital fingerprints all led back to a single source, a shell company registered just 3 months ago. The name of the company meant nothing, but the registered agent, that name I recognized. It was the brother-in-law of the man who owned Spark Grid Solutions, the very company Brenda had hired to install our new smart meters. The dots weren't just connecting, they were forming a big, ugly picture. I saved the data, my mind racing. This was proof of a coordinated attack. I marched over to the Homeowners Association office, a small, stuffy room in the community clubhouse that always smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant. Brenda was there, of course, presiding over a stack of papers. "I have proof," I said, holding up my laptop. "Your contractor's company is behind a smear campaign against me. This isn't about energy consumption. This is retaliation." She didn't even look at my screen. She just leaned back in her chair, a smug little smile playing on her lips. "Alex, we are not responsible for your online business disputes. We are responsible for the community's electrical grid, which you overloaded. The rules are clear." She pushed a copy of the bylaws across the table. "Pay the fine, and we can move on." "I'm not paying a cent. I want the logs from my smart meter," I demanded. "I want to see the data that proves I overloaded anything." Her smile tightened. "I'm sorry, but that data is proprietary to Spark Grid Solutions and contains confidential network information. We can't release it." Think about that for a second. My data, about my home, and I wasn't allowed to see it. Have you ever been told that the facts about your own life are a secret you're not allowed to know? Defeated, I walked out into the oppressive heat. The battle wasn't just about my power, it was about the truth, and she had locked it in a box and thrown away the key. Later that day, the next attack came, but this time, it was social. In the community's online forum, a place usually reserved for complaints about dog poop and overgrown lawns, a new post appeared from Brenda. "Dear neighbors," it began, "it has come to our attention that one resident's excessive energy use is straining our shared infrastructure. While we work to resolve this, you may experience intermittent brownouts. We appreciate your patience as we ensure that everyone contributes fairly to our community's well-being." She didn't name me. She didn't have to. Within minutes, the comments exploded. My phone buzzed incessantly, each notification a tiny hammer blow. "Who is it? Kick them out. My son's medical device needs stable power. This is selfish." I stepped outside for some air and saw my neighbor, Jim, struggling with his lawnmower. We'd always been friendly. We'd borrowed tools, shared beers over the fence. He looked up, saw me, and his face hardened. He just turned his back and walked away. The silence was louder than any accusation. That night, feeling utterly isolated, I got a private message. It was from a young woman named Sarah, a barista at the local coffee shop. I knew her by sight. She was always kind, with a sharp, intelligent look in her eyes. "Be careful, Alex," she wrote. "They're turning everyone against you. They did the same thing to the Garcias last year over their solar panels." The Garcias. They had moved out 6 months ago, suddenly. Everyone thought they'd just gotten a job offer out of state. Her message was a tiny pinprick of light in the darkness, but then came the final blow for the day. My landlord called. He was an old, nervous man who hated conflict. "Alex, I'm getting calls," he stammered. "The Homeowners Association. They're talking about revoking the property's compliance certificate. They say your home business violates zoning. Alex, I can't afford that. You have 30 days. 30 days? I was being evicted. My power was cut, my reputation was shattered, my income was zero, and soon I'd be homeless. All because of a data point I wasn't allowed to see. I leaned my head against the hot glass of the window, watching the streetlights flicker on in the neighborhood, a world of light I was no longer a part of. The red sticker on my door seemed to mock me in the twilight. That red sticker on my door seemed to mock me in the twilight. For a moment, I felt that cold, familiar dread wash over me, the same feeling I had when my old boss told me I was a hero one day and a liability the next. The world shrinks, the air gets thin, and you feel like you're in a soundproof room screaming while everyone outside just smiles and waves. But then something else kicked in. Anger. A cold, clear anger that burned away the fear. I wasn't a corporate whistleblower anymore. I was a guy fighting for his home. And if Brenda and her cronies thought they could erase me with a few keystrokes and a padlock, they were about to learn a very hard lesson about data. You can't just delete the truth. I had to get my power back on, at least temporarily. I remembered my dad had an old gas generator in the shed. It was a beast, loud and smelly, but it would do. The roar of the engine broke the evening quiet, a noisy declaration of defiance. My house came back to life, the lights flickering on, the servers spinning up. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. Now, for the data. I knew I couldn't hack the Homeowners Association or SparkGrid. That was their game, not mine. It would be illegal and prove them right. But what if I didn't have to hack their system? What if I could just analyze the data they were already sending? What if I could hack myself? My field is open source intelligence, OSINT. It's the art of finding truth in plain sight. It's about understanding the digital breadcrumbs everyone leaves behind. I turn my skills inward, setting up a packet sniffer on my own network. A packet sniffer is like a wiretap for your internet connection. It lets you see every single piece of data flowing in and out of your house. I wanted to see what my smart meter was really reporting. The first few hours were tedious. It was a flood of encrypted data packets, mostly meaningless chatter between the meter and SparkGrid servers. But then, I saw it, an anomaly. Every hour on the hour, a second data packet was being sent. It was smaller than the main one, and it was sent to a completely different server address, one that wasn't registered to SparkGrid. This was the digital equivalent of a secret whisper. The main packet was the official report. My energy usage? This second packet? What was it? Cracking the encryption would take too long, but I didn't need to read the letter to know who it was from. The destination server was hosted on a cloud platform known for data mining operations. This wasn't about kilowatts. This was about information. I needed another perspective, someone who understood rules but not code. My mind went to Judge Miller, a retired judge who lived a few doors down. He was in his 70s, sharp as a tack, and had a deep-seated distrust of anything with a microchip in it. He once told me he still used a flip phone because he didn't want the Google boys reading his grocery list. I found him tending his prize-winning roses, the evening sun casting long shadows across his yard. I laid out the whole story. The power cut, the smear campaign, the eviction notice. I showed him my laptop with the trace on the bot accounts. He listened patiently, his face unreadable. But when I told him about the secret data packet, his eyes narrowed. He didn't understand the technical details, but he understood secrecy. "A second set of books," he murmured, snipping a dead rose with his shears. "That's an old trick." He looked at me, his gaze piercing. "Let me see the contract you signed with the power company, not the Homeowners Association, the utility, the one with the fine print." I hadn't even thought of that. I was so focused on Brenda and the Homeowners Association that I'd forgotten they were just the middlemen. The real power, literally, came from the county utility. I dug up the digital contract, a 20-page document of dense legalese I'd clicked agree on without a second thought. Whoever reads those, right? Have you? The judge put on his reading glasses and scrolled through the document, his finger tracing the lines on the screen. He was slow, methodical. After 10 minutes of silence, he stopped. He tapped a section buried deep in the terms of service. Section 11, subsection C. "There," he said, his voice grim. "Right there." The clause was simple. It stated that the utility company and its designated contractors could collect data for the explicit purpose of billing and grid maintenance. And then, the killer line. No data pertaining to customer behavior, network activity, or personal appliance usage may be collected or transmitted without express written consent on a separate dedicated addendum. There was no addendum. I had never signed one. What SparkGrid and Brenda were doing wasn't just unethical. It was a direct breach of contract with the county power authority. This wasn't just a Homeowners Association dispute anymore. This was bigger. A surge of adrenaline hit me. This was the leverage I needed. This was the chink in their armor. But as I walked back to my house, feeling the first real spark of hope, a police car pulled up to my curb. 2 officers got out. One of them was holding a piece of paper. and they were both looking straight at me. The flashing blue and red lights painted a sickening watercolor across my lawn. My heart hammered against my ribs. Cops, of course. This was the next step in Brenda's escalation playbook. When bureaucracy and social pressure don't work, you bring in the guys with badges. One of the officers, a young guy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, stepped forward. "Sir, are you Alex?" he asked, his hand hovering near his belt. "I am," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We've received a complaint," he said, glancing at the paper in his hand. "A noise complaint about a generator, and a safety complaint. The Homeowners Association president claims you have an unauthorized commercial enterprise running in a residential zone, creating a fire hazard." I almost laughed. A fire hazard? My server rack had more cooling fans and surge protectors than a NASA command center. It was safer than Brenda's cheap Christmas lights, but I knew arguing was pointless. This wasn't about safety. It was about creating a scene. It was about painting me as a reckless crank who was endangering the neighborhood. "My power was cut without due process," I said calmly. "The generator is temporary, and my commercial enterprise is me on a laptop. There's no fire hazard." The older officer sighed, a deep, weary sound. He'd seen this 100 times, the petty neighborhood wars. "Look, sir," he said, his tone walking the line between tired and annoyed. "Your Homeowners Association rules are a civil matter. We don't get involved. But a noise violation and a potential fire code violation that we have to check out." They walked through my house. The generator was chugging away outside, a noisy but necessary heartbeat. They glanced at my server rack, their faces blank. They didn't know what they were looking at, but they dutifully took notes. In the end, they handed me a citation for the noise violation, another fine. Econometric noise violation. Fine, $250. "You've got 24 hours to shut it down, or we'll have to escalate this," the older cop said, his eyes holding a flicker of something. Maybe sympathy, maybe just exhaustion. As they left, I saw Brenda watching from her window across the street, the curtain falling back into place as our eyes met. She was orchestrating this perfectly. Every move was designed to make me look unstable, to isolate me further. What would you do in that situation, when someone is using the system itself as a weapon against you? I felt a wave of despair. They were cutting me off at every pass. I had this bombshell of a contract violation from Judge Miller, but what good was it if I couldn't even keep the lights on long to use it? My legal leverage was useless if I was financially and socially broken first. That night, the attacks moved back to the digital realm. My personal email and social media accounts were flooded with spam, phishing attempts, vicious comments on old family photos. They were trying to break me psychologically, and damn it, it was working. I felt like I was under siege in my own home. But here's the thing about data guys. We're patient. We thrive in the dark. I shut down the generator to comply with the noise complaint, plunging my house back into a hot, silent tomb, and worked off the last of my laptop battery. I couldn't fight them on all fronts, so I had to pick one, the one I knew, the data. That second data packet, the one being sent to the mysterious server. I couldn't decrypt it, but I could analyze its size, its timing, its metadata. It was small, only a few kilobytes, but it was consistent, and it corresponded perfectly with my network activity. When I was streaming a movie, the packet was slightly larger. When I was just browsing emails, it was smaller. They weren't just watching my power usage. They were watching what I was using the power for. They were logging my entire digital life. And then I found the smoking gun. I cross-referenced the destination server's IP address with a database of known data brokers. And there it was. The server belonged to a company that specialized in creating consumer profiles. They bought and sold data about people's habits, interests, and online behavior to marketing firms. My smart meter wasn't just a meter. It was a spy. I felt a chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the heat. Brenda and SparkGrid weren't just enforcing rules. They were harvesting and selling our data. This was the real business model. The fines, the power plays, that was just a bonus. The real money was in turning our neighborhood into a data farm. I saved everything, making multiple encrypted backups. This changed the game completely. It was no longer a civil dispute with my Homeowners Association. This was wire fraud. This was a criminal conspiracy. I had the proof. But then came the twist. The next morning, I woke up to an email. It was from my bank. My accounts had been frozen. A lien had been placed on all my assets by court order. Brenda and the Homeowners Association had filed a lawsuit against me for the unpaid fines and damages to community property. And by using a nasty but legal loophole in the state's civil procedure, they'd gotten an emergency judgment to freeze my funds pending the outcome. I had a mountain of evidence, a case that could put them in jail, and I couldn't even afford to buy a cup of coffee. She had checkmated me. Checkmated. That's the only word for it. I sat there, staring at the email from the bank, and for the first time in this whole fight, I felt a profound, bottomless sense of defeat. She had played the game better. While I was focused on finding the truth, she was focused on winning, and she had. My funds were frozen. My reputation was garbage. I had 30 days before I was out on the street. I had a smoking gun, but no bullets to put in it. What good is evidence if you can't afford a lawyer to present it? What good is the truth if you can't even afford to keep the lights on? You ever feel like the world just stops turning? Like you're running as fast as you can, but the ground is moving backward even faster? That was me. I walked to the local coffee shop, the one where Sarah worked, and bought a cheap black coffee with the last $7 in cash I had in my pocket. The place was buzzing with neighborhood chatter. I caught snippets of conversation. Can't believe he's fighting it. Putting everyone at risk. They were talking about me. I was the villain in their morning story. As I sat there, nursing my coffee, Carl, the owner of the small grocery store next door, walked in. A few days ago, he'd pulled me aside, whispering that his power had been flickering too, ever since the new meters were installed. He'd promised to back me up, to speak about it at the next meeting. He saw me, hesitated, and then walked to the counter, deliberately avoiding my eyes. "Carl," I said, walking over to him, "the meeting is tomorrow night. We need to tell them what's happening." He fidgeted, grabbing a handful of sugar packets he didn't need. "Look, Alex," he mumbled, his gaze fixed on the floor. I can't get involved. It's not my fight." "Not your fight? You told me your freezers almost went out." He finally looked at me, his face a mixture of guilt and fear. "Brenda stopped by yesterday," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "The Homeowners Association is looking for a new supplier for the annual summer picnic. It's a big contract. She said my store was a strong contender." He didn't have to say the rest. The contract was contingent on his silence, on his betrayal. He grabbed his coffee and practically ran out of the shop, leaving me standing there feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. Another ally gone. Another door slammed in my face. I slumped back into my chair. This was the breaking point. The moment where you either give up or you do something crazy. I pulled out that old USB drive from my pocket, the one with the data that ended my first career. I had tried to be the good guy. I had tried to play by the rules, and look where it got me. Maybe it was time to stop playing. I went home to my dark, silent house. I had no power, no money, and no allies. It was just me and the data. A crazy idea started to form in my head. A terrible, reckless, beautiful idea. I couldn't beat them in court. I couldn't beat them in the court of public opinion. So I had to change the battlefield. I had to create a new game with new rules, my rules. My plan wasn't to expose their criminal conspiracy. Not yet. That was too complex, too easy for them to deny and bury in legal paperwork. No, my plan was much simpler and much more devious. I was going to prove that their precious smart system, their tool of control, was not just invasive, it was incompetent. It was a security risk to the entire community, and I was going to do it publicly. I spent the rest of the day on my dying laptop, not as a victim, but as a predator. I wasn't digging for evidence anymore. I was building a weapon. I wrote a simple, elegant piece of code, a script. It didn't hack anything. It didn't break any laws. It simply exploited the same backdoor they were using to spy on us. It was a proof of concept, a demonstration. The script had one function, to send a tiny, harmless, false positive signal from one meter to the next, like a digital domino. It would mimic an energy spike, triggering an automatic shutdown sequence, a cascade failure. I would show them that any amateur hacker could use their own system to plunge the entire neighborhood into darkness. The annual Homeowners Association meeting was the next night, held in the high school gymnasium. It was the perfect stage. Brenda would be there, basking in the glory of her successful energy program. The whole neighborhood would be there. It was my one and only shot. As the sun went down, I put the script on a fresh USB drive. I looked at the old one in my hand, the one that represented my past failure. This new one. This felt different. This wasn't just about truth. This was about justice, and I was going to deliver it myself. The air in my house was still and heavy, like the silence before a storm. The silence before the storm. That's exactly what it felt like. The next evening, I walked into the high school gymnasium. The air was thick with the smell of floor wax, stale popcorn, and the cheap perfume of suburban politics. The entire neighborhood was packed into the bleachers, fanning themselves with pamphlets. It was a miserable, humid night, which was perfect. Nothing makes people angrier than being hot. Brenda was at the podium, a spotlight making her blonde hair shine like a halo. She was in her element, rattling off numbers and charts projected on a large screen behind her. 15% reduction in overall energy consumption in the first quarter, she announced, beaming. Our community is greener, more efficient, and more responsible than ever before, thanks to the spark grid system. A polite, sweaty round of applause rippled through the crowd. I stood at the back, near the entrance, my heart a cold, heavy lump in my chest. I watched the faces in the crowd. My neighbor Jim, who wouldn't look at me. Carl, the grocer, staring intently at his shoes. Judge Miller gave me a subtle, almost imperceptible nod. He knew something was coming. He didn't know what, but he trusted me. That one small gesture was enough. I waited until Brenda opened the floor for questions. This was my moment. I strode down the central aisle, and a hush fell over the room. All eyes were on me. The pariah, the troublemaker. Alex, Brenda said, her voice dripping with fake patience. We've already discussed your situation. This is not the appropriate forum. My question isn't about my situation, I said, my voice echoing slightly in the big room. It's about our security. I didn't wait for her permission. I walked up to the small tech table next to the podium and plugged my USB drive into the laptop controlling the projector. Her face went pale. You can't do that. That's association property. I'm not doing anything to your property, I said, turning to face the crowd. I'm just going to show you something. On the screen, my own presentation appeared. It was a simple, clean map of our neighborhood. Every house was marked with a small green dot. This is our community, according to SparkGrid, I began, my voice steady and clear. Each green dot is a smart home, all connected, all communicating. We've been told this system is making us more efficient, but I'm here to tell you that it has also made us incredibly vulnerable. A nervous murmur went through the crowd. Brenda was trying to get the security guard to intervene, but he looked confused. I hadn't done anything wrong, yet. The technology our Homeowners Association has installed has a back door, I continued. A security flaw. I know this because they used it to spy on me. But that same flaw can be used by anyone. A bored teenager, a thief, someone who just wants to cause chaos. I clicked the mouse. On the map, my own house, marked Patient Zero, began to blink red. Let's imagine a simple, malicious piece of code is sent to just one house, I said, my voice a calm, clinical counterpoint to the drama on the screen. My house. Let's see what happens. On the screen, the red signal from my house jumped to my next-door neighbor's. His dot turned red. Then it jumped to the two houses across the street. Red, red, then 4 more. 8, 16. A wave of red cascaded across the map, like a virus, swallowing the green dots in its path. In the simulation, it took 90 seconds for every single house in the neighborhood to go dark. A collective gasp went through the gymnasium. People were pointing at the screen, at their own homes now glowing a menacing red. This is not a hack, I said, my voice rising. This is a demonstration of a catastrophic failure in the system Brenda sold us. A system that can be taken down by a single email. A system that sacrifices our security for the illusion of efficiency. Brenda finally found her voice. He's lying! This is illegal! He's tampered with the system! She shrieked. And that was the moment I had been waiting for. The trap was set. Now it was time to spring it. I haven't tampered with anything, Brenda, I said, turning to look her right in the eye. I'm just using the same hidden backdoor you've been using to watch what movies I stream and what websites I visit. The same backdoor your contractor, SparkGrid, is using to collect and sell our private data. I let that hang in the air for a beat. The silence was absolute. "You want to talk about illegal?" I asked, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. "Let's talk about wire fraud. Or would you rather I just show everyone here the logs from your house instead?" Her face crumpled, the mask of control shattered, replaced by pure, unadulterated panic. She knew. She knew I had her. The crowd was no longer looking at me as the villain. They were all staring at her. And for the first time, they were seeing the truth. The entire room was silent, the only sound the low hum of the projector fan, waiting for her answer. Her answer never came. She just stood there, speechless, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. The silence in that gymnasium was the most powerful thing I've ever experienced. It was the sound of 100 families realizing they had been lied to, spied on, and sold out. Then, a single voice cut through the quiet. It was Judge Miller. He stood up slowly from the bleachers, his old, stoic face looking down at the podium. "Ma'am," he said, his voice calm but carrying the weight of a lifetime on the bench. "As a resident and as a former officer of the court, I would like to remind you of Section 11, subsection C, of our contract with the County Utility Authority." He didn't need to say more. The implication was clear. He was publicly putting a legal framework around my accusations. He was telling everyone this wasn't just a technical issue, it was a legal one. That's when the dam broke. The murmurs erupted into a roar of angry questions. "Are you spying on us? What data did you sell? My son's medical information." People were on their feet, yelling, pointing. The illusion of a happy, efficient community shattered into a million pieces. Brenda, white as a sheet, stumbled back from the podium and was swallowed by the chaos. The aftermath was swift. The Homeowners Association board called an emergency meeting the next day. Brenda was forced to resign. Spark Grid Solutions was fired, their contract terminated immediately. The County Utility Authority launched a full-scale investigation, which, thanks to my meticulously documented evidence, quickly turned into a criminal probe. It turned out Brenda and the owner of Spark Grid were getting kickbacks for every consumer profile they sold to data brokers. The fines I'd been given were just a way to silence anyone who asked too many questions. They were making millions by turning our lives into a commodity. The new board wiped my fines, unfroze my accounts, and issued a public apology. The red sticker on my door was scraped off. My power was restored. I had won. A few weeks later, a tech company that handled cybersecurity for municipal governments reached out. They had heard about what I did. They offered me a job, a big one, auditing and redesigning the security for smart city projects across the state. They wanted me to be the guy who prevents this from ever happening to anyone else. Here's the thing, though. The victory didn't feel as sweet as I thought it would. I accepted the job, but on one condition. I would design the new systems as a white box, completely transparent, with security protocols that gave users full control over their own data. It meant a smaller profit margin for the company and less money for me, but it was the right thing to do. But the neighborhood, it's different now. People are friendly again. They wave when I walk by, they thank me, but there's a distance, an invisible wall. I'm the guy who saw their secrets, the guy who exposed the rot under the floorboards. You can't unsee that. I'm a hero to them, but I'm not one of them anymore. I'm the reminder of a time they were all fooled. The quiet trust between neighbors, the easy friendships, that's a casualty of this war. It's gone, and it's not coming back. Sometimes, late at night, I sit in my office, the servers humming their steady, reassuring rhythm. I'll pick up that old USB drive, the one from my first career. Then, I look at the new one, the one I used in the gymnasium. I ended up formatting both of them, wiped them clean. I decided I'm done carrying around the evidence of other people's sins. It's a heavy burden, and it costs you more than you think. I won my home back. I got justice. But I live on an island now, surrounded by the very people I fought to protect. And some nights, in the quiet, I have to ask myself if the price was worth it. What do you think? Drop a comment below. I'd genuinely like to know. And if you've stuck with me this long, maybe stick around for good. Go ahead and smash that subscribe button. It means a lot.